So, welcome everybody to the Fall 2025 art workshops. This is so exciting. So happy everyone's here. Let me let Charlene in. And we need our pencil first, and then we'll be going over everything in the colored pencils. And hello, Charlene. I'm going to copy the information in the chat. We're just getting started. I just hit record, so you didn't miss much. All right. And I'm just going to copy that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to start. Oops, let me just double check. All right. Okay. All right, so we're going to get started and we're going to draw the general shape. And I'm going to zoom in here with my camera. It's really my phone, but I like to pretend I'm all tech savvy. I'm not. Oops, let me let Marlene in. Oh, Marlene, I think that's a new one. Okay, so we're going to start off and we're going to just make a general shape. We're going to make sort of like a kind of an egg shape. And what I'm going to do is let's see, I'm going to give some more light so that you're able to see my pencil here. And welcome, Marlene. We just got started and we are recording. Hi.
Is that a gray piece of paper you have?
This is gray toned paper.
Oh.
Yeah, if you don't have gray toned paper, that's okay.
Oh, I thought it said tan. Okay, let me see. I have a gray somewhere. I have a gray. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine too. Tan is fine too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Oops. All right, so as we start here, oops, sorry, I just lost myself on camera. Okay, there I am. We're going to start off with the top part. And basically what we're going to do is we're drawing the general shape of the hat. You know, I like to call it the hat. I don't know if anybody else calls it that, but I remember years ago when my grandmother was alive, she and I would go and pick acorns during this time, like when I was little, acorns and pine cones and leaves, and she always called it the hat. So to this day, I still call it the hat of the acorn. And it does look like a hat. So we're just drawing the general shape, and I'm making mine a little wider than my original. I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger than the original. You don't have to, but I think it's a little easier to see on camera. Also, if anybody has any questions, you can put those in the chat. I do see those. And so, again, this should be drawn lightly. You can see mine, but you should be able, you can see yours, but it should be a little bit light. And as you can see here, as we get toward the edges, both the left and the right side of the acorn, you can see that there's a piece of the acorn here that is sort of, you know, off to the side here. And so we want to just draw that shape a little better. I kind of drew it as sort of an indent, but now we're going to go back and just draw that a little more like that. And this one here, part of it kind of flips upward here to the right. And we want to draw the little part at the end, at the bottom of the acorn there. And we're going to first draw in the actual pattern here first, and then we'll go back and create the top part of the hat of the acorn, right? All right, so Let me just add a little more light to this part. Oh, let me let Michael in. And I'm just going to recopy the information in the chat. Hello. We just got started and we just drew the basic shape of our acorn. We're drawing that in pencil and I just put the information in the chat. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start at the top of our acorn, and I'm going to zoom in even more so that you're able to see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to show this up close at first. And so what we're going to do is we're starting up here. So again, we haven't drawn this part yet or this part. And we've drawn the basic overall shape. And that's going to allow us now to actually go back and make each individual part so that it looks the way we want, and it doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Basically, if you take a look at an acorn, you can see that it's all textured, and basically it's almost like scales. The pattern, the pieces of the acorn are laying on top of each other, and so I've done that here, but you can see that it's not perfect. And that's okay. So if yours turns out that you want it to be all uniform, that's great. If you want it more like mine, that's great too. Anyway, just wanted to say that. And so what we're first going to do is when we start up at the top, we're going to make the line around it a little more jagged. So let's get started with that. And I'm going to put this kind of right underneath so you can still see the top part. All right, so up here, we're going to make this a bit more jagged. So kind of going like this. And then over here on the left, I like to draw a little bit more of a rounded part right in that section. And we're going to start to do the same thing now on the right side. So again, just sort of the line is a little bit more squiggly. And again, this should be very light because we are going to be going back and retracing with our brown and our black. Okay, so this is the top part, and we're going to start now with kind of creating those overlapping shapes. And so I like to kind of start at the top and then move down one side. And so you can make some of them a little more longer, but you just want to start to stagger them. The other thing that you can do, oops, let me let Amy in. The other thing you can do is as you're doing this, you can do it very lightly in case you change your mind and want to create a different shape. Hi, Amy. We got started around 7:32. So I'm just copying and pasting the supplies in the chat. And we are just starting off with our basic shapes here for the top portion of our acorn. Good evening. This is being recorded. Everyone gets a copy afterward. Well, I send it to Karen and Rebecca from Wrightstown, and then they give it out. Okay, so I'm going to come down over to the right and start to make those shapes. So here again, what I'm trying to say is you can always change the shape of these if you go light enough. And what I like to do is I'm starting to kind of get around, start to go inward, is I like to kind of do one that is more like a curved line that's not complete so that I can then start to add more, build more on top of those shapes. You're welcome, Amy. I just saw that. The other thing is over here, going across the bottom, I sort of leave the bottom portions of the pieces of the acorn. I kind of leave those a little more alone. So what I like to do is I like to sort of come here at the bottom, right above where those shapes are, and sort of make a little bit of a defining shape. The reason being is that these ones on the bottom, I make those a little more lifted up and a little bit different than the rest. So like this. So I'm actually going in right now on the bottom.
Can you pull in a little closer with your camera?
Sure. Is that better?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did somebody else come on? Oh, okay, we're good. Thought I saw someone else come on. So I'm just first going in there at the bottom and doing that. I like to erase little portions of it so it doesn't look like that bottom part is, a border. It's more like it's, there's pieces of it that are kind of cracking a little bit. So I'm just going to let everybody look at that. And then we're going to start working our way upward. And again, it's really just layering on all of the scale-like shapes. And so you can make some that are smaller. I have absolutely done that. I'm doing that now. You can draw on top of them if you're drawing light enough. It kind of reminds me like shingles on a house. And apparently, I didn't realize, I guess because of all the different trees, there are different kinds of acorns. I always say one of these days I'm going to study them because I absolutely love trees. But I don't know a whole lot, and I want to. There's this book that I keep hearing about. I think it's called the hidden life of trees, the secret life of trees, something like that. And apparently trees communicate through their soil to each other. And I mean, I don't mean they talk or anything, but they communicate. And I just think that's really, really interesting. Nature is just so interesting. I love science. I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell when I was in high school because I used to blow up when we would do science experiments, I always used to blow something up. I was really bad at it. But outside of high school, I really liked science, the idea of it. Just don't get me near a test tube, I guess.
No
So,
Bunsen burner for you.
no Bunsen burner for me, Michael. No. So funny. I was a Girl Scout too, and we had those Bunsen burners, and I did okay with them, but I don't know. Somebody probably helped me. I'm pretty sure. So you're going to keep layering, as you can see. You're kind of stacking those shapes, and it's now getting to be, should be looking very acorn-like. And this is where, when you're ready, you want to lightly erase, lighten up any of your lines if they're too dark. And this is also where you're going to have the chance to sort of redo the shapes. I always like to kind of redo it with my brown pencil because we are about to go in now with our brown pencil. And you're probably thinking, well, we haven't drawn in the lines for, the actual, body part of the acorn. We're going to get to that. And then what we're going to do as well before we start with all of this is we are just going to draw the top portion part here. Let me lift up so we're going to draw these two parts. And it's basically, a shape on the top like so. And I'm going to draw this dark so that you can see it. It has a little round cap and then also some lines. And again, this should be very light. You should be drawing this all very light because we're going to go back and we're going to draw it in with our brown. This is the part that is hooked onto the tree. Like so. And so again, if you've drawn any of this dark, you just want to kind of lighten it up with your eraser. But we are going to now delve into using our brown. And so our main color is really the brown. Our brown is going to be used for, so basically the three colors that we're using is black, brown, and white. The black is going to be in for more of the darker areas. The brown, we are going to use those in the darker areas and the, middle and light areas, but it's going to give us a range of shading. And then the white, obviously, for the highlighted areas. So we'll start off with our brown, which is much more neutral. And so we're going to start off here at the top, the very top here. And we're going to be retracing everything in brown. And what you should be doing is not going too dark yet, because we want to be able to go back and make sure that our shading is on point. Although we can actually, when we get to the actual acorn and all around, we're going to be tracing, we're going to trace around it dark. So again, this is using our brown colored pencil. Okay, so we're going to trace first around the outside after doing this first part. I also like to erase my pencil from underneath the brown colored pencil once I retrace it with the brown colored pencil. Okay, so this part is done in brown. And we're now going to come around and we're going to trace all the way around in our brown. So you can feel free to, kind of lean into the tracing here. Basically making it nice and dark. We will be going back later and adding some black to it as well. And we're even going to trace around this bottom portion here. Okay, so again, this is the brown. We're doing a heavy hand. We're tracing around the entire thing. And then also here in sort of the fringe, I kind of call this the fringe area. Now with the fringe area, remember, we want to have little kind of like little cuts as we are tracing around. So you can kind of go upward, almost like, you know, it's broken, pieces of it have broken off. You can add more of that on later too, if you want. All right, and then when you're done that, again, just finish off by going around the entire acorn like so. And then again, I'm just going to take my eraser and just lightly erase the pencil away. I guess it probably doesn't matter too much because it is on toned paper, but I just like to erase the pencil. All right. So now what we're going to do, next step obviously is we're now going to go inside and we're going to be tracing over each of these sections. So this is where if you want to start to extend some of the shapes or change them, you can. And this I would recommend doing sort of medium, you know, not the darkest application, sort of a medium application as you are tracing around it. And here again, you know, just as you made some broken ones down here, you can do the same with these. I most certainly did. Just have fun with the shapes. I said, this is where I kind of go, you know, sometimes I'm changing up some of the shapes, making them a little longer. Starting to look like an acorn. I'm definitely going to be paying attention to the ground tomorrow to see if I can find some acorns now.
At the library today, I had a bunch of acorns fall in my car.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Put me in a bad mood for this art class.
Well, now you get some revenge and draw it. I don't know. I don't know how that goes for your car, but I'm so sorry. I've seen some leaves changing already. I don't know if anybody else has seen that, but um where was I? I feel like I was in the parking lot at Wegmans in Warrington and they were changing. I don't know why. Again, I don't know what kind of trees they are or which ones change first or if that's even a thing. Like I said, I really need to study on, you know, find out more things about trees because I love them so. But so you can then erase any of the pencil lines that are left behind. I think it even looks kind of nice just like this even, but we want to add the shading. Fix the camera here. I think I knocked it. Sorry. It's all killywampus. Take your time with those shapes. I'm just going to grab my tea off to the right over here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to shade underneath the acorn hat at first. So because what we want to do is that top part is positioned obviously on top of the acorn, but it's slightly lifted and you can see a shadow there. And so that's what we're going to do. So basically what I'm saying is we're going to shade this part first. And then we're going to follow along the edge of this area. We're going to shade under there as well. So we're going to do the top part first because that is the most detailed. And then after we're finished with that, we'll come down and finish off with all the texture. You know, this part is a lot quicker. Okay, so let's start, as I mentioned, at the bottom of the hat here. Well, first on the left side. And so we're going to give it some shading here on the left. And what we're doing right now is we're not shading our darkest. We're shading a medium. And then when we go back, we're going to then darken up with our brown. And then we'll add some black. So starting off here on the left. And now we're going to go along the edge of this. And so what we're doing is we're kind of going across and we're shading it as sort of one area, but you want to make sure to get in those nooks and crannies here along the edge. And then to make it look even more realistic, we will go back and start to shade in the actual, you know, the parts on top. So as I'm going across, I'm sort of kind of making a line, but it's a shaded line. And then I go back with my pencil and I go in between each individual section and kind of make that line a little darker. And so it should look now look like it is like there's a shadow there. And now we're going to start shading and going darker in between each of the sections. So again, basically what we just did here, we're now going to start at the bottom and we're going to just very lightly trace over each section with a shaded line. So basically, we're sort of tracing along each of those lines, right? Each of the sections. But we're using the line and shading it as we're going. So you can see that there is, some more, it's a little darker, but I'm shading as I'm outlining. And then we're going to go in each individual section. But first, we're giving it a bit of some shading. It's going to look like it's there's a bit of a shadow. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. Because there would be some shadowing, because again, these are laying on top of each other. And they create a shadow, very slight one. And so that's what we're doing right now. We're just getting a little bit of a shadow, and then we'll go back in to make sections of it a little darker. But for now, what we're doing is going around each individual section and just tracing over each of the lines, but we're also sort of coloring, shading as we are going around each of those sections. That's why this part is a little bit more of a process, but it's going to look really good. We'll also touch the last part, or I should say the top part of the acorn later on as well. Right now we are focusing more on the individual sort of shingle-like areas. So again, you want to go over each one, just very lightly shading over the lines. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to now start adding a little bit of shading to each section. And so we're going to start off here on the left side. We started shading here, right, all the way over here. And then we're going to shade, just add a little bit of lighter shading to the left of that section, like that. So it's almost like a gradient. What we're doing is a gradient. We're going to go darker here in this section, get a little lighter, and then fade it on the left side. I'm going to put this even closer now. So that was this section right here. And then what we're going to start doing is around, starting from the left, we're going to shade on each one to the left and top of each section. So see how I'm going around with my pencil on this side and shading around the top portion of each section very lightly. And we're going to start creating some texture by using lightly shaded lines with our brown. And so if you look at this up close, there's a lot of texture going on. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be doing a combination of white, then brown and black. We're going to put our brown down for a second, and we're actually going to pick up our white. So this first section we just did over here, we did some light shading, and we're going to put our brown down, and we're going to grab our white colored pencil. And we're going to add lines using our white. So we're going to start here again on the left. And basically, you can either scribble coming from the bottom portion of each section, or you can create, individual lines. And we're going on the left side of each of the sections and starting at the bottom. So I didn't do this row yet. We'll come back to that, but we're just kind of doing the tips of each section. And again, I'm taking the pencil and maybe I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, with lines. And then that's going to be a little bit lighter in each of the sections. So in each one, you're adding some white to the bottom portion of each of the sections. You should still be able to see your toned paper through the white. This is just the light kind of bouncing on the texture of the acorn hat in each section. Your acorn will turn out very detailed, but I feel like it's actually kind of simple. It's just really using lots of line work. And this should be sort of quick line work, just, some kind of scratchy white lines starting at the bottom of each section. And then you're also going to go back into that last row as well. And now we can start building up our texture using the brown. I'll give everybody a few minutes. Now, when you're done with the white, and you'll have a chance to add the white back in um, later on as well, but you now want to pick up your brown again, and we're going to start to go darker. So basically now we're going to add shading to the top portion of each section using our brown. So what is that going to look like? If I start here, again, we're not going to do, we do the bottom portion after we do the rest of the sections. So I'm now going to go to the top part of each section and I'm going to add brown. So you can see now that my white is in the bottom portion of each section. And now the brown part is going to be where each section is kind of overlapping, but you're shading at the top because there would be a shadow. So again, in each section, you're adding brown shading at the top. You can either, shade, or you can add some line work, just like we did with the white. It's going to come out looking a bit more textured because we added the white. And that's what we want. This shading is more like a dark to a medium. You can do certain ones that are a little darker if you want. And the other thing is, if you get to a point where it looks like the lines in between each section are getting blurred, you want to use your brown to redraw that line in between and make it a little darker. So we're going to start now getting into the bottom section for a second, because that's going to help you start to see the form, see the shape of your shading with the acorn. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our brown, and we're going to start to add, again, light lines using the brown. At the top, we start to use the brown lines sort of every other, right? We still want the toned paper to come through. And then at the bottom, we get a little bit darker with our shading, and we start to, make the strokes closer together. And then we'll come back after in the middle and add some more strokes of brown, but making sure that we still see the toned paper, and we'll be adding white to it. So let's get started with that. Okay, so we're going to start off here at the top on the top left. And what we're doing is the acorn is curving. So let me kind of give you a demonstration here. So say here's our acorn, right? The bottom of the acorn. And so you're going to start off making curved lines. And then they're going to start curving to the right when you come around to this side, because again, this has volume. And the curve of your lines is going to help the viewer read that this is something that is round, right? So you can see that my lines change direction. If I were to make another one here, and I just did straight lines, it doesn't really help my volume. And the lines don't go straight. If you were to look at the pattern on the acorn, they curve. So anyway, I kind of wanted to show you that quick tutorial, because that's how we're going to start to do it. I would go lightly at first, starting at the top, and you're going to make a line down. And if you want, you can skip space and make another one down to the bottom here. Coming here at the bottom, you can start to make your lines going a little bit straighter in the middle. But then again, as you're getting toward the right side, you want to make those curved lines curve upward to the right. And the same at the top of the acorn. We're going to go back and do some shading there too. But first we want to start to kind of lay in the shape of the lines. And now we're going to do a little bit of shading with our brown. So we're still going to stay in this area, but we're going to start up at the top here, and we're going to lightly shade across like this using our brown. Maybe like, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch. Just a very light shading. And we're going to do the same thing at the bottom. And again, as we're shading, so we shaded sort of straight across on the top part here, but we're going to fix it and make some of the shading go down one of the lines a little further, like every other. I'll show you, but for the bottom here, we kind of want to shade not in a straight line. You can see that I'm shading with the lines kind of going a little more straight up in the middle of the bottom portion of that acorn area. And we can take a moment here at the bottom for the little nub here to get darker on most of the part of it, except we want to leave maybe a portion on the left a little lighter. So we're going to start to get a little darker with our brown. We're going to stay in this section. We're working on the bottom portion now. So on the left side, we're going to go a little bit darker, shade a little bit darker up top here, because the shadow would be happening right here. And you can see just by doing that already, it's going to make the form of the acorn look a little different. So this side of the acorn would be darker because it's not facing us, as would on the right side this one here, this side here. And you can go shade on the right side here a little bit darker all the way down. So again, we went from the left side here, the top. We jumped over to the other side and made it equally as dark on this side. And now we're going to start to make the lines a little bit darker. So we're going to come here and we're going to make that line shaded dark. And we're going to follow it down to the bottom and make that shaded dark. So see what I did? I went here and here, and we're going to shade a little bit. The bottom portion of this whole section is going to be darker. So again, we start at the top and we kind of follow that line shape and make it darker. But we take a break in the middle here, right? We're not adding any line, but we're just now using each of those lines that are a little darker, and we're adding some shading on top of them. You see what I'm doing here? I'm going on each section. So we're building up the darkness of the shading. Now we're going to take our brown and we're going to go in between the lines that we just created, and we're going to make a light brown line. So that would look like this. Really light. Just a suggestion. So the way I'm holding my pencil, I'm holding it so that it's very light in my hand and that my thumb can kind of move it. Well, it's not really my thumb, it's really my forefinger here. But it's kind of a quick motion. In between. And we're going to continue with this brown now into the top portion of this area of the acorn. And then we're going to be getting into our black. So on this portion, we're going to shade right underneath on the long part of the stem. This is the long part of the stem, so there would be a shadow here. There's a bit of a knobby area up here. So we shade here, and then right up here, there's an indent that we shade. And one right here with our brown. And then we're going to get into this section here where it's light brown lines kind of throughout this bottom section. And then here we make some more lines in this section. So you can make this a little bit darker. It kind of almost looks like a pumpkin, the separations. And there's a tiny little section over here that's kind of coming out on the right of it. And with that, we're going to grab our black. All right, so we're going to start to get darker, even darker than we have. This time we're going to start at the top, and we're going to start on this section and start to kind of outline this whole area. Using black. And then we're going to do some shading on it. So we outlined it, and then we're going to shade black on top of the brown, just on the edge here. And a little bit in this section at the top. Now we're going to be coming back and adding a little bit of brown again, but we're adding the darkest areas. We're going to come to this part, and we're also going to outline this as well, but a very light black outline. And when we shade, we're basically going to shade in the bottom portion of this section. So it's going to be just a little bit of shading here at the bottom. And we're going to get into our shingle areas. But before we do that, we're going to take our black and we're going to outline again along the edge in this whole top section of the top of the acorn. And that's going to take us down to the bottom here where we actually want to, again, outline in black at the bottom, and then we'll go back in with individual, individual parts that we're going to add black. So we're going to go all the way around, but we're going to lighten up our black on the right side. So if you look, my black is darker here. I'm not pressing as hard here on the right, on the outline, but it's still darker than the brown. Now we're going to start to add some brown, or I'm sorry, black in between each section. So for instance, where a part, maybe a corner, touches another one, I'm going to outline that and shade it because there would be kind of a shadow. So where it sort of overlaps, I don't go around the entire part of it, just where it's starting to overlap. And then I shade on the bottom portion of that section. So for instance, I'll show you what I mean. Well, for these, we're going to shade a little bit of black on the outer edge, just like this. And then when each of the shingle areas connect, so here's one, it's overlapping, and it's meeting up with another, I make it a little darker. So it's really where it's sort of pointy. So see what that's doing already? You're not doing outlining the whole section in black. Just sometimes it's the bottom portion of that. I'm going to call them shingles because I don't know what else to call them. So you're just going to take your black and sort of outline around each of the bottom shingles. And then we'll do some shading also on top of each one. Not every one though. We're also going to take our black and remember that bottom section here of the top part going across. We're going to very lightly shade across in black. So I'm not shading the whole thing. I'm kind of taking strokes and shading across. But then when I get to the edge, remember this part that's flipped out here on the right? I'm going to shade a little bit in the flipped out part area. And also on the left side where the other portion is sort of sticking out here using black. And then we're going to get into the bottom part and we're going to take our black and we're going to trace around the outside all the way to the bottom. And back up. So tracing around in black. Now we're going to add some shading with the black in this whole area. But what we're going to do is we're going to start off at the top on the left and shade a little bit right at the top on the left. We're going to go a little bit into where we have the brown, right? The darker brown lines. You're going to now use your black to trace over those. So let's start up at the top here. And basically what I like to do is the top part of the line, each line coming from the crown, you're going to make each portion of it a little darker, like so. So let's do that first before we go into the rest of the line. So it's just a little bit darker on each line as you're going at the top. And we're going to do that same thing at the bottom. A heavier black line in just a portion of the line. And now you're going to start to add a little bit of some black strokes, more so at this bottom portion because it's darker. So that would look like this. So I'm going to keep taking my black and I'm shading because I'm adding strokes as I keep going around. It's going to get a little bit darker here on the right side and the left side. But I'm doing it slowly, right? Like I'm adding those strokes very slowly. And we're going to do the same at the top, except we're going to make a little bit more shading underneath again of the crown using the black. So basically what I do is I go back under and I'm going to kind of make some more kind of dark lines cutting from the bottom and then adding a little bit of shading as I go in and out. So see here, I added a piece of shading because this part is kind of, cutting, it's kind of, cut or broke, whatever. And it would be sort of lifting up a little. So there would be a little bit more of a shadow. And you can also create a shadow on a section by going onto it and just making it a little bit darker. And then we're going to finally just go into the top part and we're going to add some black shading to the top of each section on top of the brown. Just a little bit. So you see I'm kind of going on each section, adding a little bit. And then sometimes, if you want a little more darkness in between, you can make that line a little bit darker with your black. But right now we're really trying to just do a little bit of shading with the black at the top of each section. It doesn't have to be on every piece either. There can be pieces that are lighter, just with your brown. And when you're ready, you can then add white colored pencil in between each of the lines at the bottom, and you can even add more at the top. And again, on each of your shingles, you can even just, add a little bit of white on the whole thing to kind of lighten it up if you want to. You don't have to. But I really add the white on the bottom portion in between the dark lines. The white is, the brightest part. You can always add a little more brown to a section if you want it to be a little bit more of a medium shading. I can go back in and add a little bit of brown even on top of my white, and I get a light brown, which is kind of nice. But you don't have to. I'm so excited to see what everybody's looks like. I'm going to remove my spotlight and I'm going to stop the recording.